All right, so you're probably hearing a lot of buzz right now about President Trump being back in office and,
Yeah, he's shaking things,
shaking things up again, right? In the federal government
For sure.
again. And
Round two.
so you want the inside scoop on what's really going on.
Yeah.
And lucky for you, we've got our hands on this leaked memo
Oh, yeah.
from the Office of Personnel Management.
That's right.
So basically, it's the government's HR department, and let me tell you, it's raising eyebrows all over Washington.
Big time. Yeah, this is a fascinating document.
Yeah.
It's not just like we're tweaking things around the edges here.
Right.
This memo is hinting at some pretty major changes.
Yeah.
In how the federal workforce is going to operate. And it's potentially going to affect millions of employees.
Yeah.
Including, quite possibly, you
Right.
or someone you know.
So let's jump right in
Let's do it.
to the deep end with this thing that they're calling Project 2025.
All right.
Okay, so it comes from the Heritage Foundation. It's a conservative think tank.
Yes.
And it kind of lays out this plan to,
Yeah.
well, shrink the government a lot.
That's right.
So we're talking fewer federal employees, less regulation,
Yep.
and a big shift in power away from Washington
Right.
and back to individual states.
That's the idea.
Now, this isn't just some theoretical idea.
No.
President Trump just signed this executive order
Right.
wiping out all these protections for federal workers
Right.
that the Biden administration put in place.
Right.
Essentially, it's clearing the path for Project 2025 to become reality.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so what does this actually mean for the average person?
That's the question.
Well, imagine if your local school suddenly lost a chunk of its funding
Right.
because of cuts proposed in Project 2025.
Yeah.
Or what if the EPA
Yeah.
gets replaced with a patchwork of
Yeah.
state-level environmental agencies,
Right.
and suddenly the air you breathe could depend on
Oh, wow.
which side of the state line you live on?
That's a great point.
Yeah, and it
Well, it
goes
goes deeper than that.
deeper than that, right?
Yeah.
Project 2025, it's not just about shrinking
Right.
the size of the government.
Uh-huh.
It's about changing who runs it.
That's right.
And they've been pretty open about wanting to put people
Yeah.
who share their conservative ideology
That's right.
into key positions
Yeah.
throughout the government.
All throughout.
Now, I get that,
Every administration
every administration wants to bring in their own people.
wants their people in there.
Right. But this feels different, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah.
Like, shouldn't these jobs go to the most qualified people,
Right.
regardless of their political beliefs?
Yeah, you would think so.
Right.
I mean, that's the core debate here.
Yeah.
Historically, civil service has been seen as a neutral entity,
Yeah.
carrying out these
Yeah.
essential functions of the government,
Yeah.
no matter who's in the White House. But this project, 2025, seemed to challenge
Yeah.
that very idea.
So how does this leaked memo fit into all of this?
Well, think of the memo as a sort of first step
Okay.
in implementing this vision.
All right.
It outlines several key changes, and it starts with this voluntary buyout program.
Okay.
They're offering federal employees 8 months' salary to leave by February 6th.
8 months salary. Wow. That's
That's a pretty good deal.
a pretty tempting offer, especially if you're already thinking about retirement.
Yeah, especially if you're close to retirement. Yeah.
That's right.
So that could lead to a wave of experienced people heading for the exits.
You would think so.
And that brings up this whole issue of
Brain drain.
brain drain.
Yeah.
Right.
Big time.
Imagine waiting months for your passport renewal because a bunch of experienced State Department employees
Took the buyout.
took the buyout.
That's the kind of impact we're talking about.
Yeah, I could see how losing all that experience could really
Throw a wrench.
throw a wrench in things.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder who's going to fill those positions.
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
If Project 2025 is any indication,
Yeah.
they'll be looking for people who align ideologically
Oh,
with the administration,
okay.
potentially even over experience or qualifications.
Well, buyouts are one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
What else is in this memo that has people talking?
Well, remember how many federal employees
Uh-huh.
started working from home during the pandemic?
Yeah.
This memo puts a stop to all that.
Really?
It mandates that most federal employees
Wow.
have to be back in the office 5 days a week.
Talk about a culture clash.
Yeah, I know.
So many companies are embracing remote work these days.
Right.
And now the federal government is going in the completely opposite direction.
Totally.
I can't imagine that's going over well with everyone.
I would imagine not, no.
You've got people who relocated during the pandemic,
Right.
assuming they could keep working remotely.
Yeah.
Now they're being forced to choose between uprooting their lives again or potentially losing their jobs.
Wow.
Not to mention the impact on morale and productivity.
Of course.
Some people thrive in an office environment, sure.
Yeah.
But others do their best work remotely.
Yeah.
This feels like a pretty big step backward.
It does. Yeah. It raises questions
Yeah.
about whether the administration is in touch
Right.
with the realities of today's workforce.
So we've got buyouts.
Uh-huh.
We've got a return to office mandate.
Yep.
What else is lurking in this memo?
Well, there's one more piece
Okay.
I think you'll find particularly interesting.
Okay.
It's this whole emphasis on loyalty.
Oh.
The memo talks about creating a workforce of
Okay.
reliable, loyal, trustworthy employees and establishing enhanced standards of suitability and conduct.
Okay, that's where my ears really perk up.
Yeah.
Loyalty can be a pretty loaded word.
Sure.
What are we talking about here? Blind obedience.
Right.
Is there any room for dissent within this administration?
That's a great question. Right. And it's one that has a lot of people concerned.
Yeah.
It harkens back to something called Schedule F,
Oh, yeah.
which President Trump tried to implement
Uh-huh.
during his first term.
Okay.
Basically, it was a way to make it easier to fire federal employees
Okay.
who weren't seen as loyal
Mm-hmm.
to the administration.
So imagine if your boss could fire you just because you disagreed with them
Exactly.
on something. That's essentially what Schedule F allowed for.
That's it. That's right.
Now, that sounds like a recipe for trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't it important for government employees to be
Yeah.
able to voice concerns without fear of reprisal?
Yeah.
How else can we ensure that things are running properly
Right.
and that people are being held accountable?
Right.
You're hitting on a crucial point.
Yeah.
A healthy democracy requires a civil service
Right.
that can speak truth to power,
That's it.
even when it's uncomfortable.
Exactly.
And this emphasis on loyalty
Yes.
really raises questions about whether this administration
The
values
kind of dissent.
that kind of dissent.
Exactly.
So we've got buyouts that could lead to a brain drain,
Right.
a return to office mandate
Yes.
that feels out of step with the times,
Yeah.
and this whole loyalty thing,
Huh?
that's setting off alarm bells.
Yeah.
I have a feeling this is just the tip of the iceberg.
You're absolutely right.
Right.
This leased memo is just a glimpse into the much larger changes
Yeah.
that might be on the horizon.
Okay.
And we haven't even touched on the potential legal challenges
Right.
that are sure to arise from all of this.
All right. Well, buckle up, everyone.
Yeah.
This is going to be a wild ride.
Get ready.
We'll be right back
Yes.
to unpack even more of this story
Yeah.
and what it means for the future of our
Of our country.
Of our country. Yeah.
Absolutely. We were just talking about how this leaked memo might be
Yeah.
just the first domino to fall
Right.
in a much larger effort to reshape the federal government. And it's not just coming from the administration itself.
Right.
Conservative groups
Yeah.
have been pushing for these kinds of changes for years.
You mentioned legal challenges earlier.
I did.
I imagine the unions are going to have something to say about all this, right?
Absolutely. I mean, unions play a
Yeah.
huge role in protecting
Yeah.
the rights of federal workers.
Right.
They negotiate contracts, file grievances,
Uh-huh.
and they can challenge unfair labor practices in court.
Right.
We're already seeing pushback.
Yeah.
Groups like the American Federation of Government Employees,
Yeah.
their president actually called these buyouts pressure tactics
Oh, wow.
and criticized the administration for creating what he called a toxic work environment.
I can see why they'd be upset. It feels like this memo is trying to create a climate of fear
It does.
where people are afraid to speak up or disagree
Yeah.
for fear of losing their jobs.
Yeah. And that's a real concern. And it gets to the heart of what a healthy democracy looks like. You need people within the government
Yeah.
who are willing to raise red flags when they see something wrong,
Yeah.
even if it means challenging those in authority.
It's like that saying, sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Exactly.
If you try to silence dissent within the government, you're basically creating a breeding ground
Right.
for corruption and abuse of power.
100%. And that's why these proposed changes are so worrisome.
Yeah.
They could have a chilling effect on free speech
Yeah.
within the government, making it much harder
Right.
for whistleblowers to come forward and expose wrongdoing.
Let's not forget the practical implications of all of this.
Yeah.
We've already talked about the brain drain
Right.
that could result from these buyouts.
Yeah.
But what about the disruption?
Oh, huge.
to essential government services.
Right.
We rely on the government for so many things, from processing our tax returns to ensuring the safety of our food and water.
Right.
What happens if those services start to break down because of inexperienced?
Yeah.
Or unqualified people being put in charge.
I mean, it's not just a hypothetical concern either.
Right.
I mean, think back to a few years ago when there was that huge backlog in processing tax returns.
Right.
And that was partly due to staffing shortages
Mm-hmm.
and budget cuts at the IRS.
Yeah.
Now imagine those kinds of situations becoming more common across
yeah.
various government agencies.
That's not a future I'm particularly excited about.
No,
It feels like we're at a crossroads here.
I think so.
We can either double down on this idea of a professional,
Right.
nonpartisan civil service
Uh-huh.
that serves the public good,
Yeah.
or we can go down this path
Right.
of politicization and ideological purity tests.
Yeah, and the choice we make
Yeah.
will have ripple effects for generations to come.
For sure.
I mean, the federal government plays such a huge role in our lives, whether we realize it or not.
Right.
Everything from the quality of our schools and healthcare.
To the safety of our roads and bridges
Yeah.
is affected by decisions made in Washington.
So, stepping back for a moment,
Yeah.
what's really driving this push
Right.
to reshape the federal government?
That's a good question.
Is it just about efficiency and shrinking the size of the bureaucracy, or is there something more ideological at play here?
That's a complex question.
Yeah.
And there are probably a mix of motivations involved.
Right.
But for groups like the Heritage Foundation,
Yeah.
who are behind Project 2025,
Uh-huh.
it's very much an ideological project.
Okay.
They believe that the federal government has become too big,
Okay.
too powerful, and too intrusive in people's lives.
Right.
They want to fundamentally change the role of government in American society.
I get that some people are frustrated with bureaucracy and government overreach.
Sure.
But it feels like throwing the baby out with the bathwater
I know.
to dismantle the entire system just because
Yeah.
some parts of it aren't working as well as they could be.
I think it's all about finding the right balance.
Right.
How do we
Right.
make government more efficient and accountable
Right.
without undermining the essential services it provides
Yeah.
and the expertise that's been built up over generations?
That's a question that I don't think anyone has a perfect answer to,
No,
but it's a conversation we need to be having
we do.
as a society.
Absolutely. And it's a conversation
Yeah.
that shouldn't be limited to politicians and policy wonks.
Right.
Every citizen
Right.
has a stake in how our government functions.
We all need to be paying attention to these developments and thinking critically about what they mean for our future.
Couldn't agree more.
Because ultimately, the future of our government
Is in our hands.
is in our hands. Well said.
Yeah.
We'll be right back after a quick message to wrap up our deep dive
Okay.
into this complex and important issue. Okay, we're back. And I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by all this.
A lot.
We've been talking about buyouts.
A return to office mandate.
Yeah.
This whole loyalty litmus test,
Right?
it's a lot to digest.
It is. It's a
Yeah.
it's a pivotal moment
Yeah.
for the federal workforce
Right.
and for the country as a whole.
Right.
And I think it's important to step back and kind of consider
Yeah.
the larger historical context here.
Okay.
This isn't the first time
Right.
we've seen efforts to politicize the civil service.
You're right. You know, I was thinking about this,
Yeah.
and I remember reading about something called the spoils system
Oh, yeah.
back in history class.
Uh-huh.
Didn't that have something to do with
Yeah.
giving government jobs to political supporters?
Exactly. Back in the 19th century,
Yeah.
it was common practice for incoming presidents
Uh-huh.
to fire large numbers of government employees
Oh, wow.
and replace them with their own loyalists.
So basically, they were just cleaning house
Yeah, basically.
and putting in their own...
They're friends.
Right.
The cronies, exactly.
Okay, and so what happened? Well, it led to
Yeah.
widespread corruption and inefficiency
Right.
because people were getting jobs based on who they knew
Right.
rather than what they knew.
So how did we get away from that system?
Well, after President Garfield was assassinated
Oh, wow.
by a disgruntled office seeker,
Wow.
there was a huge public outcry for reform.
Oh, okay.
And that led to the passage of the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act
Okay.
in 1883,
Okay.
which created this merit-based system
Oh, okay.
for federal employment.
So that's where this whole idea
That's where it came from.
of a professional, nonpartisan
Yeah.
civil service came from.
Yes. The goal was to create a system
Yep.
where government jobs were filled
Right.
based on qualifications and experience,
Right.
not political connections or loyalty to a particular party or ideology.
Right.
And for the most part,
Yeah.
that system has worked pretty well
Yeah.
for over a century.
But it sounds like this memo and Project 2025 are trying to
Got to turn back the clock
turn back the clock.
to a time when
Yeah.
who you knew mattered more than what you knew.
And that's scary. There are definitely
Echoes of that.
echoes of the spoils system in some of these proposals.
And that's what has a lot of people worried.
Right. And it's not just about,
Yeah.
abstract principles here.
No,
This
but
could have real world consequences for all of us.
absolutely. I mean,
Right.
imagine if the people responsible for ensuring the safety of our food or medicines or airplanes
Yeah.
were more concerned with pleasing their political bosses
Right.
than with doing your jobs properly.
Right.
That's a scary thought.
That is a very scary thought.
Yeah.
So what can we do about it?
I mean,
What can ordinary citizens do
right.
to push back against these changes and protect the integrity of our government?
Well, I think the first step is to be aware
Okay.
of what's happening.
Right.
We need to educate ourselves and others
Okay.
about these issues and the potential consequences they hold.
Right. We can't fight something if we don't even know it's happening.
Exactly.
Okay, so be aware.
Be aware.
And then what?
And then we need to make our voices heard.
Okay, how do we do that?
Contact your elected representatives.
Okay.
Write letters to the editor.
Uh-huh.
Talk to your friends and family
Right.
about these issues.
So make some noise.
Yeah, let's make it clear that we value
Yeah.
a professional, nonpartisan civil service
Uh-huh.
and that we won't stand for efforts to politicize it.
And what about supporting organizations that are fighting to protect the rights of federal workers?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
There are a number of groups out there
Yeah.
who are doing important work in this area,
Like.
like the Partnership for Public Service
Okay.
and the American Federation of Government Employees.
And let's not forget the power of investigative journalism.
Oh, absolutely.
Supporting news organizations that are committed to holding those in power accountable
More important now than ever.
is more important now than ever.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's a lot we can do,
We can?
even if it feels like a daunting task.
It is daunting.
Yeah.
But it's also essential.
Okay.
The future of our government,
Yeah.
and indeed our democracy, depends on it.
Well, you've given our listeners a lot to think about.
Hopefully.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up this deep dive?
Just this. Don't underestimate the power of your voice.
Oh.
Every citizen has a role to play
Yeah.
in shaping the future of our country.
Okay.
Get informed, get involved,
Yeah.
and make your voice heard.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive
It's been a pleasure.
into the potential reshaping of the federal workforce.
For sure.
It's been an eye-opening conversation, to say the least.
It has been.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on The Deep